It appears we are live. What's up, everybody? It's G Mr. Drew here to welcome you to another episode of the Andrew Glowczewski Experience. This is going to be episode 241. We're going to continue working these firearm props, breaking them down by handles, aka frames, muzzles, aka chambers, and attachments, and all that other stuff. Um, Yeah, I totally forgot that yesterday when I ended the last stream, I was talking about how I was going to start submachine guns next, but I still have two with quotes, 6 shooters to do, which is technically only 2 squares, and then there was like this extra handgun, and I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. I'd already started drawing. I moved the camera over so I could work on the back side of this page, so because it's far left. Um, So I already got this one done, and I decided not to break it down just because they had this gun alone, and then they had it with the extension, which I hadn't drawn yet on any of the other weapons. But I'm like, okay, I get an extended clip, gotcha. Like I don't really need to like draw those sort of things. It's just like an extension that shoots out the bottom of the handle. It's like, all right, I got it. It's like just a rectangle. Um, So I just did it with this one just because. And then, yeah, I just had the laser sight on it, which is the only attachment. So it wasn't really taking up anything different. The gun was exactly the same. So I was like, you know what, let me just draw this one. Did that one off stream just now while I was prepping the stream, adjusting the camera, and doing all that other stuff. There we go. And yeah, man, I got last night I was gonna start streaming again, and then I got caught up with a few things, and I started something new, and I was like, "Am I gonna do this?" And then I tried it, and it worked out pretty well, and I was like, "Oh shit, I'm gonna do it." So after I get done with these weapons, I'm just going to work on a female character, or revisit a female character, and yeah, it should be good. Let's see. Other than that, I think. I think that's gonna be it. I got YouTube playing in the background, new rock stars doing breakdowns. Let's see, some Spider-Man stuff, some Eternal stuff, Alt Shift X reading, Lovecraft, some Berserk stuff, and then some Legend of Zelda stuff. So yeah, plenty to play in the background. So let's just get into it.
Is empty, and after dancing in the rain of our nerd tears of desperation for many months, Sony Pictures finally decided to agitate us agitated arachnophiles, no longer releasing the trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home. Or, as I like to call it, Underoos 3, Lost in New Yorks. A lot of New Yorks, probably. And good lord, did Peter Zendaya Parker need to stop talking, because now these Marvel multiverse streets are no longer safe from these eight-legged geeks. Like, my god, if there was a penny Olympics, Mysterio would be decked out in gold. Like Quentin Beck or like Quintain Bolt. But like, what the hell even happened here? Like, I knew things were probably going to go off the rails in this movie, but I did not know that we would not need the rails at all. But what exactly went wrong with Doctor Strange's spell anyway? Well, lucky for you, Speculation Nation, I think that I have discovered
Okay.
the MCU multiverse science behind this big secret. A science that has been teased to us in previous Marvel films like Spider-Man Far From Home, as well as the very first Doctor Strange movie. You should have been paying attention, because, oh my god, I have been waiting so long to say this sentence. Everything you know about this trippy astral projection sequence from Doctor Strange 1 is wrong. Doctor Strange is not traveling through different universes. He is traveling to the gateway to the multiverse. Let's talk about the initial singularity, my nerd babies.
I'm sorry, you're saying there's a multiverse? Because I thought that was just theoretical. I mean, that completely changes how we understand the initial singularity. We're talking about an eternal inflation system. That's it.
Well, while we thought that Peter Parker was just being an E equals MC square, he was actually talking about the Big Bang Theory. No, not those eight-legged geeks from TBS. But remember the first words from the theme song? The whole universe was in a hot, dense space. That is the initial singularity. The split second before the Big Bang, when all of the energy and matter of the universe was condensed into the size of like a proton. A very hot proton. So how do the proton probably has an OnlyFans? This is what we see Doctor Strange go through along his journey to the doorway to the multiverse. And if you slow down the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer, right after Strange's spell starts to go haywire, you can see a condensed version of that same journey through really quick flash. To break down that Doctor Strange spell from the trailer, we gotta first break down what the hell even happened when we first took those MCU shrooms back in 2016. So, when the Ancient One first meets a Steven, we see him first escape upward in direct orbit around our planet, about to touch a really pretty butterfly before the Ancient One tells Chewie to punch it and send Steven to infinity and beyond. Literally, to infinity and beyond, through a wormhole through space and time, first leading him through a universe propagated by stars that quickly changes to a universe that is just these blue, green, red, and purple beams shooting out of Doctor Strange, finally leading Strange to the doorway of the initial singularity, surrounded by what I'm assuming to be the dark matter from the pre-Big Bang dark world where Malekith lived. Like, this is the very thing that Malekith hates, the initial singularity, the light. Why does this happen in this order? Because this is the reverse order the universe.
That's a good call. Bringing up Malekith. Because that is the truth. It was just very obscure idea in the Thor movie.
Concepts of space blue, time green, power purple, and reality red. Hence why Strange's limbs correspond to those Infinity Stone colors. And then later on, as the universe begins to cool, that energy converts itself to matter, and then we get planets and stars and pretty much everything in our universe, all the physical stuff. But why these four? Because these four are the core of the physical material universe according to the MCU. Our universe cannot exist without having a reality, space to occupy that reality, time for us to live without reality, and power is just the energy of the universe. That is what caused everything to exist. The energy became matter and all this shit happened. What about the mind? Well, let's continue on in our journey, shall we? So while Strange is on his way to the singularity, which I also think is where the embers of Genesis come from what if episode 2, that's a side thing. Anyway, he goes through this tunnel while the Ancient One asks him what is real. But notice how his body is freaking out like the ether from Thor 2. This is because, like I said, we are in the Dark World period, right before the Dark World's about to end. So the universe is complete darkness because the laws of the universe have yet to be born. All of the laws of reality are in this bubble that Doctor Strange is headed to. That's why they call it singularity. A singularity is a point of infinite potential. Like a black hole is a singularity of like infinite mass, and the initial singularity is a point of just where everything is. It's infinity. That's why we call it the Infinity Stones. This is why all the beams from Doctor Strange's hands converge into the initial singularity before that initial singularity opens up. All those laws of the reality of our universe are in that bubble. Like the only things in the dark pre-Big Bang universe are darkness, dark matter, the dark elves, and the ether/reality stone. Because the reason why the reality stone is Kool-Aid to begin with is because there is nothing but reality. There's no space, there's no time, there's nothing. It's just reality. It's a soup of reality. After Strange finally goes through the initial singularity, congratulations, now we are inside the Big Bang. This means that Doctor Strange has shrunk down to Ant-Man size, and apparently is still shrinking until he shrinks down to the root of existence where the Ancient One says mind and matter meet. As we learn in Ant-Man and the Wasp, the quantum realm and the mind are pretty much inextricably linked. I mean, Janet was able to communicate with all of her family through Scott, and Hank rebuilt his entire house from his mind while he was going mad in the quantum realm. And also why the environment seems to change when Hank and Janet share their kiss in the quantum realm. Their thoughts and their feelings are affecting their area around them. Just real quick, this video is brought to you by The Ridge. The Ridge wallet is light, sleek, and charging batteries. And they have a cool event going on now where every dollar spent on the website before September 18th enters you to win a 2020 Jeep Gladiator. Or $50,000 if you prefer cash and are really excited to paint yourself gold to match your new Ridge wallet, because that's what you do, but just don't affect yourself with chemicals, right? So get 10% off today with free worldwide shipping and returns by going to ridge.com/newrockstars. That's Ridge, RIDGE.
Goddamn, their commercials have gotten longer.
Use the code new rock stars.
I skipped ahead 90 seconds. It's still going. It's a 2-minute commercial. What are they doing?
This environment keeps creepily changing in the scene is because Strange has shrunk to the absolute root of existence, meaning that he is even smaller than we have seen any him shrink before. He shrunk himself to the very realm of the mind. This is an entirely conceptual space where the environment responds to what Strange is thinking about. The second Strange starts worrying about those weird faces, hands come out and grab him because he's scared. He's fearing for his life. And because he's thinking about hands, his hands are growing hands. Because your mind makes your reality. This is extremely important now, because this is both why Doctor Strange's spell does not work in Spider-Man No Way Home, and why Doctor Strange 2 is called Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Because, my nerd babies, the realm of the mind is the doorway to the multiverse, as represented by Strange going through this Einstein-Rosen bridge in his eyeball and smashing through this weird glass prism. Brothers, sisters, and gender-led representatives of the Speculation Nation, I'm proud to present to you the multiverse, because this is the multiverse. Each of these weird glass prism thingies is a different universe. Like what Strange broke out of was the confines of the MCU universe, and then he broke into Dormammu's dark universe, where nothing makes any freaking sense. This is why the Avengers needed Pym particles to time travel. Like, they shrank so small that they were able to hop to other timelines/universes in this manner. But when Strange does it, he uses the initial singularity. Because, like the MCU has tried to tell us since the very beginning, magic is just science that we don't understand.
Your ancestors called it magic, and you call it science. Well, I come from a place where they're one and the same thing.
Doctor Strange is essentially doing what the Avengers did, but with magic. He hacks the source code of the universe to use the magic that he derives from the multiverse to travel through space and time, through the singularity, so that he can travel through the multiverse if he wanted to. So, because Peter Parker interrupted Strange's spell with his confusion about his dual life, everything inside of Strange's incantation circle journeyed through the initial singularity and popped back into the Sanctum basement from another reality. Because you have to keep in mind that the Sanctum Sanctorum is probably a staple of every single, multiverse reality. This is why this movie is called No Way Home. These two heroes are probably in whatever universe Peter's confused and fractured Spider-Man essentially tuned into. And Peter's goal throughout this entire movie is trying to find his way back to his native MCU universe, while running into some of our favorite Sony Spider-Man villains along the way, because the word Spider-Man was used in the spell. There you have it, Marvel Multiverse Science. I told y'all we were Marvel scientists in this bitch. I told you guys. Y'all didn't believe me. But yeah, what do you guys think? Do you guys think that I have finally cracked the secret of the Marvel Multiverse before, Spider-Man No Way Home and Multiverse of Madness? Or do you think that, something else is going on and Peter is not actually in a different universe? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down there. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. You can follow me at Mastertainment if you want to see me tweet some really weird shit about Marvel, because that's what I do 24/7. But most importantly, you can follow New Rockstars wherever we are on social media. And when you do that on YouTube, make sure to hit that notification bell so you can get notifications every time we upload a video, because we do that pretty much every day. And of course, do not forget to hit up NewRockstarsMerch.com so you can get cool and dope-ass shirts like this and all sorts of cool items. We got Suicide Squad shirts, we got all sorts of dope stuff. So if you want to let that nerd flag fly on NewRockstarsMerch.com, we got it, baby. We got it all. We got all of it. But anyways, thanks so much again for watching. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Will return. The first nation to harness its powers will be the nation that dominates the world.
I'm Eric Voss, and Marvel's latest Eternals trailer began to give us some answers about the big picture of the MCU and how we've apparently been praying to the wrong people. Show me what you got.
Heavenly gods and creator, creator, forgive my transgressions against family and community. May my chores complete me as I complete them.
What is the celestial Marvel's and Eternals link to Thanos that has us most curious. The Mad Titan was brought up twice in the trailer, first by Ajax when talking about him snapping away half of all life.
5 years ago, Thanos erased half of the population of the universe.
And then later, a chat between Dane Whitman and Cersei.
Why didn't you guys help fight Thanos? Or any war, all the other terrible things throughout history?
We were instructed not to interfere in any human conflicts unless deviants are involved.
Yeah, bullshit, you may be thinking impolitely. Because Thanos, while born to eternal parents, carried a deviant gene, the source of his scar.
That's what I've been saying.
Shouldn't that have qualified him as deviant enough for the Eternals to intervene? Well, the answer isn't entirely clear, because when you go back and look at how the MCU has defined Thanos' backstory and lineage, the studio has been very careful with what clues exactly they've offered so far as to Thanos' exact bloodline. I suspect that not only will this film answer that question, but that answer could provide the basis for how things like the mutant gene could be established in this universe. Thanos' parents were Eternals Alars, aka Mentor, and Suisan, living on Titan. Now in the comics, Titan is the moon of Saturn, Titan, but in the films, Titan is a planet outside of our solar system. And we know the movies intend to keep Thanos' lineage intact because when Red Skull greeted Thanos on Vormir, he mentioned his father's name as a way to prove his divine insight.
Thanos, son of Eros.
Now, Alars moved to Titan from Earth after a dispute with his brother, the Eternal Zurus, who is the father of Thena, making Thena and Thanos first cousins, and if you're a president with a school in Loki named after you, not a deal breaker. Well, while Thanos' Eternals bloodline has been confirmed for the films, his deviance has not yet been explicitly mentioned. The closest evidence we've gotten was Thanos' explanation to Doctor Strange in Infinity War.
Titan was like most planets. Too many mouths, not enough to go around. And when we faced extinction, I offered a solution. Genocide. At random, dispassionate, fair to rich and poor alike. They called me a madman.
Yeah, there, Thanos' reality stone conjured projection of Titan's past shows what looks like a peaceful society of Titans, though from what I can determine, none of them appear to be purple, scarred, and jacked. The implication seems like the Titan skepticism of Thanos might have had some racial bias to it. Now, in the comics, that prejudice led Thanos' own mother, Suisan, to attempt to murder him at birth, considering him a deviant who would go on to destroy civilization. But really, in that moment, deviant is thrown as a kind of slur describing Thanos' phenotype. Thanos has long been considered an eternal hyphen deviant, or an eternal with a deviant gene, sometimes called an eternal deviant hybrid, though he's not half and half. Actually, if we're going to be specific, he's really a pureborn eternal with a deviant genetic mutation, a dormant gene buried in his DNA that he got from his ancestors that was only now activated the moment of his conception. And if that science is how this Eternals film describes Thanos' genetic history, we're in for a very different conversation in this film when it comes to subjects like mutants in the MCU. But this video is brought to you by The Ridge. The Ridge wallet is light, sleek, and industrial. It's designed to fit in your front pocket, unlike those bulky monstrosities that make a sit crooked when they're in their back pocket. The Ridge comes in over 30 styles and colors, including carbon fiber and burnt titanium. It holds up to 12 cards and still has room for cash, so you can show off your fancy Euro collection to cashiers and other people who probably don't care. Every Ridge wallet comes with a lifetime guarantee, and they'll let you test drive it for 45 days and send it back for a full refund if you don't love it. They also have great backpacks, phone cases, and other cool gear. They're running a special promotion where every dollar spent on the site before September 18th, you're entered to win a 2020 Jeep Gladiator, or $50,000 if you already own a cool convertible Jeep, or if you just prefer cash. So get 10% off today with free worldwide shipping and returns by going to ridge.com/newrockstars. That's ridge.com/newrockstars, and use code newrockstars. Find the link in the video's description. The Eternals comics established that the Celestials created 3 groups of intelligent life on Earth: the Eternals, the humans, and the deviants. But within humankind, they encoded a latent gene that would not activate for untold millennia, implied to be the mutant gene, or X gene. As mutants began to emerge among the population as far back as Isaba-Nur of ancient Egypt, aka the mutant apocalypse, mankind didn't really realize this was happening. They didn't yet have a word for them until the modern era. Mutants are really considered a random genetic variation to humans, but still part of that same species. So too may have been the case with Thanos. Born an eternal, considered an eternal, just merely possessing a deviant mutation. mutation. But still, from the perspective of the Celestials, and from Thanos' cousin Athena, maybe an Eternal same as the rest of them, creating among the Eternals a kind of confusion whether or not to act. It's even possible that Thanos' warpath was celestial inspired and ordered. The writers of Infinity War talked about structuring Thanos' journey as a spiritual quest, giving him dogmatic dialogue and a final shot with biblical undertones. And we know there is some historical link between the Celestials and the Infinity Stones. One of the first Celestials we saw in the MCU was Isan the Searcher in the Collector's Story, who once possessed the Power Stone. And then Nebula in Endgame described Vormir, the resting place of the Soul Stone, as a dominion of death at the very center of celestial existence. And there is some untold story of how Thanos acquired his first Infinity Stone, the Mind Stone, because Loki was given the scepter by Thanos' minion, the Other, in order to conquer Earth and acquired a Tesseract, a space stone. But that scepter was later revealed to contain the Mind Stone, meaning Thanos must have somehow gotten that stone first, and perhaps it was a gift from the gods. Because it just seems like the Celestials wanted Thanos to carry out that cosmic genocide based on Ajax's words in the Eternals trailer.
The people of this planet brought everyone back with a snap of a finger. The sudden return of the population provided the necessary energy for the emergence to begin.
Now, I've talked about how that emergence could refer to a lot of things, like the emergence of the deviants, the emergence of mutants on Earth, the emergence of a sleeping celestial gestating inside Earth like an egg, the emergence of people unsubscribing when my theories reach too far. Hey, come back, come back. But in any of these cases, I think the Celestials have begun this process because mankind, like Icarus's mythological analog, flew too close to the sun. The Avengers defied the Celestials' will that was carried out by the Celestials' chosen son, Thanos. If you think about it, Thanos' status as a Celestials champion could be the explanation to his unique genetic condition. Because if his deviant gene is described as a mutation, similar preconditions are being increasingly encoded into several MCU characters. Like Wanda Maximoff was capable of casting low-level probability hexes as a young girl years before Infinity Stone radiation, which we believe could be Marvel's way of saying we know Wanda Maximoff was a mutant in the Marvel comics, and we are now saying she was born this way. Also, the Black Widow movie established Ursa Major, a Russian mutant, as now MCU canon. And Thanos, now, as a possible herald of the Celestials, could be to future MCU generations a harbinger of mutants. Support New Rockstars by checking out our merch options, including our new Marvel What If inspired limited edition shirts at newrockstarsmerch.com. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EABoss. Follow and subscribe to New Rockstars. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Facts concerning the late Arthur German and his family. Written by H.P. Lovecraft in 1920. Part 1. Life is a hideous thing, and from the background behind what we know of it appear demoniacal hints of truth, which make it sometimes 1,000-fold more hideous. Science, already oppressive with its shocking revelations, will perhaps be the ultimate exterminator of our human species, if separate species we be, for its reserve of unguessed horrors could never be borne by mortal brains, if loosed upon the world. If we knew what we are, as should do as Sir Arthur Jermyn did, and Arthur Jermyn soaked himself in oil and set fire to his clothing one night. No one placed the charred fragments in an urn or set a memorial to him who had been, for certain papers and a certain boxed object were found, which made men wish to forget. Some who knew him do not admit that he ever existed. Arthur Jermyn went out on the moor and burned himself after seeing the boxed object which had come from Africa. It was this object, and not his peculiar personal appearance, which made him end his life. Many would have disliked to live if possessed of the peculiar features of Arthur German, but he had been a poet and scholar and had not minded. Learning was in his blood, for his great-grandfather, Sir Robert German, had been an anthropologist of note, whilst his great-great-great-grandfather, Sir Wade German, was one of the earliest explorers of the Congo region, and had written eruditely of its tribes, animals, and supposed antiquities. Indeed, old Sir Wade had possessed an intellectual zeal amounting almost to a mania, his bizarre conjectures on a prehistoric white Congolese civilization earning him much ridicule when his book, Observation on the Several Parts of Africa, was published. In 1765, this fearless explorer had been placed in a madhouse at Huntingdon. Madness was in all the Germans, and people were glad there were not many of them. The line put forth no branches, and Arthur was the last of it. If he had not been, one could not say what he would have done when the object came. The Germans never seemed to look quite right. Something was amiss, though Arthur was the worst, and the old family portraits in German House showed fine faces enough before Sir Wade's time. Certainly the madness began with Sir Wade, whose wild stories of Africa were at once the delight and terror of his few friends. It showed in his collection of trophies and specimens, which were not such as a normal man would accumulate and preserve, and appeared strikingly in the oriental seclusion in which he kept his wife. The latter, he had said, was the daughter of a Portuguese trader whom he had met in Africa, and did not like English ways. She, with an infant son born in Africa, had accompanied him back from the second and longest of his trips, and had gone with him on the third and last, never returning. No one had ever seen her closely, not even the servants, for her disposition had been violent and singular. During her brief stay at German House, she occupied a remote wing, and was waited on by her husband alone. Sir Wade was indeed most peculiar in his solicitude for his family, for when he returned to Africa he would permit no one to care for his young son, save a loathsome black woman from Guinea. Upon coming back after the death of Lady German, he himself assumed complete care of the boy. But it was the talk of Sir Wade, especially when in his cups, which chiefly led his friends to deem him mad. In a rational age like the 18th century, it was unwise for a man of learning to talk about wild sights and strange scenes under a Congo moon, of the gigantic walls and pillars of a forgotten city, crumbling and vine-grown, and of damp, silent stone steps leading interminably down into the darkness of abysmal treasure vaults and inconceivable catacombs. Especially it was unwise to rave of the living things that might haunt such a place, of creatures half of the jungle and half of the impiously aged city, fabulous creatures which even a Pliny might describe with skepticism, things that might have sprung up after the great apes had overrun the dying city with the walls and the pillars, the vaults and the weird carvings. Yet after he came home for the last time, Sir Wade would speak of such matters with a shudderingly uncanny zest, mostly after his third glass of the night's head, boasting of what he had found in the jungle, and of how he had dwelt among terrible ruins known only to him. And finally he had spoken of the living things in such a manner that he was taken to the madhouse. He had shown little regret when shut into the barred room at Huntingdon, for his mind moved curiously. Ever since his son had commenced to grow out of infancy, he had liked his home less and less, till at last he had seemed to dread it. The Knight's Head had been his headquarters, and when he was confined, he expressed some vague gratitude, as if for protection. 3 years later, he died. Wade German's son, Philip, was a highly peculiar person. Despite a strong physical resemblance to his father, his appearance and conduct were in many particulars so course that he was universally shunned. Though he did not inherit the madness which was feared by
You know,
some,
give me a
he was
second. Go
densely
turn off my
steeped,
kitchen light.
given to brief periods of uncontrollable violence. In frame, he was small but intensely powerful, and was of incredible agility. 12 years after succeeding to his title, he married the daughter of his gamekeeper, a person said to be of gypsy extraction, but before his son was born, joined the Navy as a common sailor, completing the general disgust with his habits and misalliance had begun. After the close of the American War, he was heard of as a sailor on a merchantman in the African trade, having a kind of reputation for feats of strength and climbing, but finally disappearing one night as his ship lay off the Congo coast. In the son of Sir Philip German, the now accepted family peculiarity took a strange and fatal turn. Tall and fairly handsome, with a sort of weird Eastern grace despite certain slight oddities of proportion, Robert German began life as a scholar and investigator. It was he who first studied scientifically the vast collection of relics which his mad grandfather had brought from Africa, and who had made the family name as celebrated in ethnology as in exploration. In 1815, Sir Robert married a daughter, the 7th Viscount Brighthome, and was subsequently blessed with 3 children. The youngest
All right.
were never publicly seen on account of deformities in mind and body. Saddened by these family misfortunes, the scientists sought relief in work and made 2 long expeditions in the interior of Africa. In 1849, his second son, Neville, a singularly repellent person who
These look like single shots.
Philip German
So weird. It looks like the handle is actually a part of the entire weapon. No rotating chamber, which means it's like a one-shot. Looks like a potato gun.
Son, Alfred, who was one day to be the father of
Huh.
German. Friends said that it was this series of griefs which the unhinged mind of Sir Robert German, yet it was probably merely a bit of African folklore which caused the disaster. The elderly scholar had been collecting legends of the Onga tribes near the field of his grandfathers and his own explorations, hoping in some way to account for Sir Wade's wild tales of a lost city populated by strange hybrid creatures. A certain consistency in the strange papers of his ancestor suggested that the madman's imagination might have been stimulated by native myths. On October 19, 1852, the explorer Samuel Seton called at the German house with a manuscript of notes collected among the Ongas, believing that certain legends of a grey city of white apes ruled by a white god might prove valuable to the ethnologist. In his conversation, he probably supplied many additional details, the nature of which will never be known, since a hideous series of tragedies suddenly burst into being. When Sir Robert German emerged from his library, he left behind the strangled corpse of the explorer, and before he could be restrained, he had put an end to all 3 of his children, the 2 who were never seen, and the son who had run away. Neville German died in the successful defense of his own 2-year-old son, who had apparently been included in the old man's madly murderous scheme. Sir Robert himself, after repeated attempts at suicide and a stubborn refusal to utter an articulate sound, died of apoplexy in the 2nd year of his confinement. Sir Alfred German was a baronet before his 4th birthday, but his tastes never matched his title. At 20, he had joined a band of music hall performers, and at 36 had deserted his wife and child to travel with an itinerant American circus.
Wow, it
His
looks a
end
whole
was
lot
very
like
revolting. Among the animals in the exhibition with which he traveled,
a
was
modified,
huge
stripped-down
blue
version
gorilla
of the
lighter color than the average, surprisingly
shooter here.
attractive beast of much popularity with the performers. With this gorilla, Alfred German was singularly fascinated, and on many occasions the 2 would eye each other for long periods through the intervening bars. Eventually, German asked and obtained permission to train the animal, astonishing audiences and fellow performers alike with his success. One morning in Chicago, as the gorilla and Alfred German were rehearsing an exceedingly clever boxing match, the former delivered a blow of more than the usual force, hurting both the body and the dignity of the amateur trainer. Of what followed, members of the greatest show on earth do not like to speak. They did not expect to hear Sir Alfred German emit a shrill, inhuman scream, or to see him seize his clumsy antagonist with both hands, dash it to the floor of the cage, and bite fiendishly at its hairy throat. The gorilla was off its guard, but not for long, and before anything could be done by the regular trainer, the body which had belonged to the baronet was past recognition.
The gorilla fucked him up.
Arthur German was the son of Sir Alfred German and a music hall singer of unknown origin. When the husband and father deserted his family, the mother took the child to German house, where there was none left to object to her presence. She was not without notions of what a nobleman's dignity should be, and saw to it that her son received the best education which limited money could provide. The family resources were now sadly slender, and the German house had fallen into woeful disrepair. But young Arthur loved the old edifice and all its contents. He was not like any other German who had ever lived, for he was a poet and a dreamer. Some of the neighbouring families who had heard tales of old Sir Wade German's unseen Portuguese wife declared that her Latin blood must be showing itself, but most persons merely sneered at his sensitiveness to beauty, ascribing it to his music hall mother, who was socially unrecognised. The poetic delicacy of Arthur German was the more remarkable because of his uncouth personal appearance. Most of the Germans had possessed a subtly odd and repellent cast, but Arthur's case was very striking. It is hard to say just what he resembled, but his expression, his facial angle, and the length of his arms gave a thrill of repulsion to those who met him for the first time. It was the mind and character of Arthur German which atoned for his aspect. Gifted and learned, he took highest honours at Oxford, and seemed likely to redeem the intellectual fame of his family. Though of poetic rather than scientific temperament, he planned to continue the work of his forefathers in African ethnology and antiquities, utilising the truly wonderful, though strange, collection of Sir Wade. With his fanciful mind, he thought often of the prehistoric civilization in which the mad explorer had so implicitly believed, and would weave tale after tale about the silent jungle city mentioned in the latter's wilder notes and paragraphs. For the nebulous utterances concerning a nameless, unsuspected race of jungle hybrids, he had a peculiar feeling of mingled terror and attraction, speculating on the possible basis of such a fancy and seeking to obtain light among the more recent data gleaned by his great-grandfather and Samuel Seton amongst the Ongas. In 1911, after the death of his mother, Sir Arthur German determined to pursue his investigations to the utmost extent. Selling a portion of his estate to obtain the requisite money, he outfitted an expedition and sailed for the Congo. Arranging with the Belgian authorities for a party of guides, he spent a year in the Onga and Khan country, finding data beyond the highest of his expectations. Among the Kaliris was an aged chief called Mwanu, who possessed not only a highly retentive memory, but a singular degree of intelligence and interest in old legends. This ancient confirmed every tale which German had heard, adding his own account of the stone city and the white apes as it had been told to him. According to Mwanu, the grey city and the hybrid creatures were no more, having been annihilated by the warlike Mbangus many years ago. This tribe, after destroying most of the edifices and killing the live beings, had carried off the stuffed goddess which had been the object of their quest, the white ape goddess which the strange beings worshipped, and which was held by Congo tradition to be the form of one who had reigned as a princess among these beings. Just what
These talks about white apes makes me
creatures
think
could
of
have been, Moanu had no idea.
the Frazetta
but he
painting
thought
of
they were
those
jewels
white
of the
apes.
ruined city. German could form no conjecture,
that?
but by close questioning obtained a very
Some old-ass
picturesque
shit.
legend of the stuffed goddess. The ape princess, it was said, became the consort of a great white god who had come out of the west. For a long time they had reigned over the city together, but when they had a son, all three went away. Later, the god and princess had returned, and upon the death of the princess, her divine husband had mummified the body and enshrined it in a vast house of stone where it was worshipped. Then he departed alone. The legend here seems to present three variants. According to one story, nothing further happened, save that the stuffed goddess became a symbol of supremacy for whatever tribe might possess it. It was for this reason that the Bangus carried it off. A second story told of a god's return and death at the feet of his enshrined wife. A third told of the return of the son, grown to manhood, or apehood, or godhood, as the case might be, yet unconscious of his identity. Surely the imaginative blacks had made the most of whatever events might lie behind the extravagant legendary.
Damn.
Of the reality of the jungle city described by old Sir Wade, Arthur German had no further doubt, and was hardly astonished when early in 1912 he came upon what was left of it. Its size must have been exaggerated, yet the stones lying about proved that it was no mere Negro village. Unfortunately, no
Goddamn,
carvings
man.
could be found, and the small size of the expedition prevented operations towards clearing the one visible passageway that seemed to lead down into the
That shit
system
seems
of
hard.
vaults,
I can't
which Sir
believe it.
Wade had mentioned.
Just read that
The
shit.
white apes and a stuffed goddess were discussed with all the native chiefs of the region, but it remained for a European to improve on the data offered by old.
Doesn't Black Panther have white apes in it? Just like the White Panther god, Boss? Doesn't the gorilla clan of Black Panther have a white ape?
Of which he had vaguely heard, since the once mighty
So I guess it's,
were now the submissive servants of King Albert's government.
Just the way all
And
that
with
shit
but little
works.
persuasion could be induced to part with the gruesome deity they had carried off. When Germans sailed for England, therefore, it was with the exultant probability that he would, within a few months, receive a priceless ethnological relic, confirming the wildest of his great-great-great-grandfather's narratives, that is, the wildest which he had ever heard. Countrymen near German House had perhaps heard wilder tales handed down from ancestors who had listened to Sir Wade around the tables of the Knight's Head. Arthur German waited very patiently for the expected box from M. Aaron, meanwhile studying with increased diligence the manuscripts left by his mad ancestor. He began to feel closely akin to Sir Wade, and to seek relics of the latter's personal life in England, as well as of his African exploits. Oral accounts of the mysterious and secluded wife have been numerous, but no tangible relic of her stay at German House remained. German wondered what circumstance had prompted or permitted such an effacement, and decided that the husband's insanity was the prime cause. His great-great-great-grandmother, he recalled, was said to have been the daughter of a Portuguese trader in Africa. No doubt her practical heritage and superficial knowledge of the Dark Continent had caused her to flout Sir Wade's tales of the interior, a thing which such a man would not likely to forgive. She had died in Africa, perhaps dragged thither by a husband determined to prove what he had been told. But as German indulged in these reflections, he could not but smile at their futility, a century and a half after the death of both his strange progenitors. In June 1913, a letter arrived from Mr. Aaron, telling of the finding of the stuffed goddess. It was, the Belgian averred, a most extraordinary object, an object quite beyond the power of a layman to classify. Whether it was human or simian, only a scientist could determine, and the process of determination would be greatly hampered by its imperfect condition. Time and the Congo climate were not kind to mummies, especially when their preparation is as amateurish as seems to be the case here. Around the creature's neck had been found a golden chain bearing an empty locket, on which were armorial designs, no doubt some hapless traveller's keepsake, taken by the Mbangus and hung about the goddess as a charm. In commenting on the contour of the mummy's face, Enver Harheron suggested a whimsical comparison, or rather expressed a humorous wonder just how it would strike his correspondent, but was too much interested scientifically to waste many words in levity. The stuffed goddess, he wrote, would arrive duly packed about a month after receipt of the letter. The boxed object was delivered at German House on the afternoon of August 3rd, 1913, being conveyed immediately to the large chamber which housed the collection of African specimens as arranged by Sir Robert and Arthur. What ensued can best be gathered from the tales of servants and from things and papers later examined. Of the various tales, that of aged Soans, the family butler, is most ample and coherent. According to this trustworthy man, Sir Arthur German dismissed everyone from the room before opening the box, though the instant sound of hammer and chisel showed that he did not delay the operation. Nothing was heard for some time. Just how long Soames cannot exactly estimate, but it was certainly less than a quarter of an hour later that the horrible scream, undoubtedly in German's voice, was heard. Immediately afterward, German emerged from the room, rushing frantically towards the front of the house as if pursued by some hideous enemy. The expression on his face, a face ghastly enough in repose, was beyond description. When near the front door, he seemed to think of something and turned back in his flight, finally disappearing down the stairs to the cellar. The servants were utterly dumbfounded and watched at the head of the stairs, but their master did not return. A smell of oil was all that came up from the regions below. After dark, a rattling was heard at the door leading from the cellar into the courtyard, and a stable boy saw Arthur German glistening from head to foot with oil and redolent of that fluid.
He about to light himself on fire.
And vanish on the black moor surrounding the house. Then, in an exultation of supreme horror, everyone saw the end. A spark appeared on the floor, a flame arose, and a pillar of human fire reached to the heavens.
Saw that coming.
The House of German no longer existed. The reason why Arthur German's charred fragments were not collected and buried lies in what was found afterward, principally the thing in the box. The stuffed goddess was a nauseous sight, withered and eaten away, but it was clearly a mummified white ape of some unknown species, less hairy than any recorded variety and infinitely nearer mankind, quite shockingly so. Detailed description would be rather unpleasant, but two salient particulars must be told, for they fit in revoltingly with certain notes of Sir Wade German's African expeditions, and with the Congolese legends of the White God and the Ape Princess. The two particulars in question are these. The arms on the golden locket about the creature's neck were the German arms, and the jocose suggestion of Enver Harheron about certain resemblances connected with the shriveled face applied with vivid, ghastly, and unnatural horror to none other than the sensitive Arthur German, great-great-great-grandson of Sir Wade German and an unknown wife. Members of the Royal Anthropological Institute burned the thing and threw the locket into a well, and some of them do not admit that Arthur German ever existed.
Shit. Yo, Alt Shift X, where'd you go, bro? He was reading the book.
The Descendant
There we go.
by H.P. Lovecraft, believed to be written in 1927. Writing on what my doctor tells me is my deathbed, my most hideous fear is that the man is wrong. I suppose I shall seem to be buried next week, but in London there is a man who screams when the church bells ring. He lives all alone with his streaked cat in Gray's Inn, and people call him harmlessly mad. His room is filled with books of the tamest and most puerile kind, and hour after hour he tries to lose himself in their feeble pages. All he seeks from life is not to think. For some reason, thought is very horrible to him, and anything which stirs the imagination he flees as a plague. He is very thin and grey and wrinkled, but there are those who declare he is not nearly so old as he looks. Fear has its grisly claws upon him, and a sound will make him start with staring eyes and sweat-beaded forehead. Friends and companions he shuns, for he wishes to answer no questions. Those who once knew him as a scholar and aesthete say it is very pitiful to see him now. He dropped them all years ago, and no one feels sure whether he left the country or merely sank from sight in some hidden byway. It is a decade now since he moved into Gray's Inn, and of where he had been he would say nothing till the night young Williams bought the Necronomicon. Williams was a dreamer, and only 23, and when he moved into that ancient house he felt a strangeness and a breath of cosmic wind about the grey-wizened man in the next room. He forced his friendship where old friends dared not force theirs, and marveled at the fright that sat upon this gaunt, haggard watcher and listener. For the man always watched and listened, no one could doubt. He watched and listened with his mind more than with his eyes and ears, and strove every moment to drown something in his ceaseless poring over gay, insipid novels. And when the church bells rang, he would stop his ears and scream, and the grey cat that dwelt with him would howl in unison till the last peal died reverberantly away. But try as Williams would, he could not make his neighbour speak of anything profound or hidden. The old man would not live up to his aspect and manner, but would feign a smile and a light tone, and prattle feverishly and frantically of cheerful trifles, his voice every moment rising and thickening till at last it would split in a piping and incoherent falsetto. That his learning was deep and thorough, his most trivial remarks made abundantly clear, and Williams was not surprised to hear that he had been to Harrow and Oxford. Later it developed that he was none other than Lord Northam, of whose ancient hereditary castle on the Yorkshire coast so many odd things were told. But when Williams tried to talk of the castle and of its reputed Roman origin, he refused to admit that there was anything unusual about it. He even tittered shrilly when the subject of the supposed undercrypts, hewn out of the solid crag that frowns on the North Sea, was brought up. So matters went till that night when Williams brought home the infamous Necronomicon of the mad
Ooh, Necronomicon.
Al-Hazred. He had known of the dreaded volume since his 16th year, when his dawning love of the bizarre had led him to ask queer questions of a bent old bookseller in Chandos Street, and he had always wondered why men paled when they spoke of it. The old book bookseller had told him that only 5 copies were known to have survived the shocked edicts of the priests and lawgivers against it, and that all of these were locked up with frightened care by custodians who had ventured to begin a reading of the hateful black letter. But now, at last, he had not only found an accessible copy, but had made it his own, at a ludicrously low figure. It was at a Jew's shop in the squalid precincts of Clare Market, where he had often bought strange things before, and he almost fancied the gnarled old Levite smiled amongst tangles of beard as the great discovery was made. The bulky leather cover with the brass clasp had been so prominently visible, and the price was so absurdly slight. The one glimpse he had had of the title was enough to send him into transports, and some of the diagrams set in the vague Latin text excited the tensest and most disquieting recollections in his brain. He felt it was highly necessary to get the ponderous thing home and to begin deciphering it, and bore it out of the shop with such precipitate haste that the old...
Alright, that's gonna be it for these handguns.
When at last it was saved in his
Where are we at?
room, he found the
We're at an
combination of
hour?
black letter.
Yeah, let me call this one quits. I'll be right back, and we'll just start another stream with the semi-autos. Semi-auto, right? No. Submachine guns. So, kind of like Tech 9s and shit like that. And figure out how to break these things down. So yeah, stop this one. I'll look those over. Create a plan of attack, and then yeah, I'll start streaming again. And yeah, glad to get these done. You know, these were the last of the handguns. This one I did off screen or off stream just because it was pretty basic with all the options that they had. So I was just like, let me just throw that shit in there, and then it's all there for me to kind of remember. And then these were a little bit more difficult, or a little more painstaking to redraw because it was just like the same gun over and over. If you look at, like, the handle is part of, you know, the entire frame itself, and the only thing is the where you put the bullets, and it's the same on both options here. Just one's like a snub nose and one's like hooked up with all the gadgets and shit like that. And you know, this seems to have like a sleeve put on it, and this gun, oddly enough, looks exactly like this. Like, as far as like the frame of the weapon, if you look at the handle, it looks like the sleeve that was on the handle is removed, so it's just the literally the frame that goes inside of the sleeve here is just bare. But if you look at it, it's the same kind of setup, at least below here, where this kind of has maybe just like a 2-shooter. This is a 1-shooter. So it's like modified just to fit one bullet. And yeah, it's neat, man. The sights on this is neat, like how they're so tall and things like that. But the front sight is lower than the back sight. So you have to like aim it up when you line it up, and makes a whole bunch of sense. But I wonder what these were, if they were like flare guns or something like that. Kind of would make sense, but they weren't like red or plasticky or anything like that. They were like metallic guns that looked like they actually did something. So it'd be interesting. I don't know enough about the game to know how these weapons were used or anything like that. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting, and I kind of annoying that I was like, oh shit, I can't break this one up from like handle to frame to to muzzle or anything like that, because it's all just one piece. And literally the only difference is here, aside from like the laser sight, is the bullet or whatever this potato mechanism is over here. And the only difference here is like the snub nose. This one has just the original barrel, but and then the attachments added, but they're the same exact gun. So it was like, okay, I guess I'm just gonna end up drawing this twice, and I mean, I guess it works out. And neat laser sight down here. It's not the typical one that I've drawn 100 times now. That's like this one here. It's the the other kind. So I was like, oh, okay, that's neat. But anyways, man, yeah, I'm gonna call this one quits at an hour. I'm G Mr. Drew at G Mr. Drew on all socials. Follow, like, and subscribe. GMrDrew.art, my website. Link is in bio. You can contact me through there. Everything through there. If you like this kind of stuff, you know, and everything else that I do, you may want to consider supporting me on Patreon. You know, trying to be independent artists, and I don't mind, you know, working for it. All this stuff is in working on and creating my manga and everything like that. I've already worked out the story. Now I just need to create the manga, but in order to do that, I have a lot of world building and visualizing of characters, environments, and props to do. And this is why I'm doing these prop studies, because, you know, weapons are a thing of the world, and, you know, of the world that I've created. So studying these, I'll learn to make my own, and doing that, you know, whatever. That's how it goes. But yeah, you could support me on Patreon for as low as $1 a month, but starting at $3 a month, I'll actually do like commissions for you, annual commissions, and it goes up from there. And there's tons of options. I think they're all really well worth it. And if you just want to hire me flat out, you know, you can find me on Freelancer and things like that. But anyways, that's the end of this one. I'll be back. Love y'all. Peace.